Hi, this is Jim Connor. Welcome to this episode of Game Changers X. Today we're in Tallinn, Estonia. I'm with Max Gurvits here, who's with Cross Border Angels. And Max, it's been good to meet up with you finally. We've had a bunch of emails.
I know.
Along the way, and really enjoyed the conference here. Why don't we give us an overview of what you're doing with Cross Border Angels?
That's right. Well, thanks for having me, Jim. So with Cross Border Angels, we're a multinational angel network. We're based. We have several bases all over the world. We have a base in San Francisco. My partner Kaushal, you've probably met. He's based in San Francisco. I'm covering Eastern Europe and Middle East. We have offices in Barcelona and in London in Europe. And you know, I've personally a lot of experience building companies, investing in companies in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. So my job is kind of to go to places like Tallinn or Helsinki tomorrow and find interesting companies.
So you sort of scan the European landscape, if I can use that word,
right.
Looking for them. And you're in Barcelona, London, and here, I think.
And all over Eastern Europe and Middle East, basically, yeah.
So that's a pretty big territory. How do you get, I mean, first of all, you're pretty linguistic. You speak several languages.
I do. Thank you.
And that's a big advantage. And so do you travel quite a bit and just hang out?
Quite a lot of travel, yeah. So last year I made 129 flight segments. So that was like every third day, basically. Right now I try to do less, but I go on longer trips. But basically, I'm based out of Sofia, Bulgaria. It's a very interesting place. I hope you visited one day. You have actually. You told me yes. You were there in the 70s, right?
Yeah. Hate to give away my age, but yes, I was there in the 70s.
You got to come back again because a lot of stuff is happening there. So I moved there about 5 years ago after I sold my first company. Ran a fund there with European support, EU support. We built an accelerator program. We helped some local co-working spaces and entrepreneurship organizations set up. And from there on, I started looking at neighboring countries, and that's how I started expanding my network.
So let me ask you a couple thoughts here for U.S.-based, in fact, Northern California. Well, I'll just say U.S.-based investors. Is there a fit for an investor who's in the U.S., an angel investor or an angel group member, to look at these European companies either individually, or should they look at them as a syndication opportunity?
Well, that's a very good question. You know, first of all, it's good that you asked this. Most U.S. investors will tell you they'll never invest outside the U.S., right? So it's already a rare thing for U.S. investors to look outside, but I'm happy that, you know, we see more and more of it. Generally, the risks are very different than in the U.S., and that's something that I think investors should understand. The market risk is much higher with European startups. I mean, there are benefits. It's much cheaper to start things here. Generally, valuations are much, much lower. That's the biggest kind of investment rationale. Entry valuations are up to 6 times lower on average, whereas exit valuation is only twice lower in Europe, right? So there's big arbitrage between those valuations compared to the US. Now, the real risk is market risk, right? So Europe, first of all, is not a single market. So whatever product you have to market and business develop it in very different ways in every single country. And because of that, Europe generally lacks this base of business development, marketing and sales, and also HR talent that you see in the US. So sometimes you see really good companies in a place like Estonia, and they may have interesting early traction, they may have raised some money from local investors, they might be these local superstars, but when you dig into their operations, you will see that on the business development side, it's usually pretty weak. And that's, I think, the biggest risk. And that's also, if you ask me, the biggest advantage, which is not always easy to execute. But as an American investor, if you can actually bring in that business development expertise, if you can, for instance, bring in a hired gun CEO who is fluent in English, if you can bring in someone who's actually done marketing sales in the US, if you can make that work within that team without some kind of disconnect happening inside, that's when you have a great opportunity.
Now, this is very interesting to me because I have scratched my head about this a couple times, wondering, can you employ what we call best practices for sales and marketing that we have in U.S. startups here in Europe? And I've been a little bit confounded by it, frankly, because there are so many languages, and the mentality for making a purchase seems to be quite different. We're in the U.S. We're kind of we're consumer oriented. We like to try cool new things, right. And if it doesn't work, we're okay. And in Europe, it seems to be they're much more analytical about these things. Right. And is it really the best thing? And will it work for me, et cetera, et cetera? What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely right. You know, what I always notice, because I spend a lot of time in the U.S., I also spend a lot of my time helping European companies get access to the U.S. market. The biggest difference is that in America, it's part of the culture to spend money on getting better at something, right? So you hire someone to do, you hire someone smarter than you are to do stuff that you can't do yourself. If you're rich, you will be spending money on all kinds of services and products to make your life nicer. In Europe, there's a very different attitude towards money. So if you're rich, you're rich because you spend less on stuff, right? That's why you're rich, right? Because if you're not rich, you spend all your money away, whereas the rich person saves on everything, right? So there is this mentality here that don't spend money on anything, like do it yourself or just don't do it, but don't spend money because that's how you become poor, right? This is a new capitalist society here in Estonia. I mean, 30 years ago, this was Soviet Union, right? So it's all brand new here. This is the hard thing. That's where the mentality is different. Now, your question about whether you can actually do it, whether you can bring in this kind of business development skills into a company, I think you can, but then for specific markets, right? So in Europe, business development is just very slow, and the markets are very conservative. They usually adopt very well towards the end. One simple example I can give you: the Netherlands, the country where I'm from. We have the highest adoption for a lot of internet services. There was a time when the Netherlands had the highest per capita adoption of LinkedIn, Twitter, a bunch of other social media. But it always comes very late. It's never early adoption, right? So the Dutch will never be early adopters, but once something works, you can send a sales team over there, and they'll get you the whole country on it, right? But it's not early.
Yeah, that is true. It's not early, and most startups need some early traction to get validation. The product's going to work and get more capital. So that's an interesting challenge. Well, that's great. Delightful to bump into you, and look forward to keeping in touch. Perfect. And we'll go forward.
Thank you so much, Jim. Okay. Thanks.
This is Jim Connor. Thank you for joining us for this segment on Game Changers X. You can follow us on our website, gamechangers.tv, Facebook, or Twitter. We look forward to your continued interest and participation in upcoming shows.